power doesn't begin with strength. It begins with observation. The first player in every mind game is not the one who moves. It's the one who watches. You think you live in a world of words, actions, choices. But the truth is colder. You live inside a web of hidden exchanges. Every glance, every pause, every question that sounds innocent is all data, and most people hand it away freely, smiling, never realizing they've already lost. Here's the cruel truth. You don't need to out-argue anyone. You only need to understand them before they understand you. Because whoever knows first rules first. This is the secret art of intelligence gathering. The quiet warfare beneath every conversation. They taught you to speak with confidence. But they never taught you the real weapon, silence. They told you to be honest. But not how honesty is used to map your weaknesses. They told you to trust. And that was the beginning of your exposure. When you walk into a room, the game has already started. People aren't greeting you, they're scanning you. Tone, posture, micro-reactions. And in those first 3 seconds, most of your psychological armor is already measured. What they don't tell you is this. Mind games aren't played by villains. They're played by everyone who wants something. Affection, power, respect, advantage. The question isn't who's manipulative. It's who's strategic enough to notice. You can't master mind games by aggression. You master them through invisibility, through calmness so unsettling that others reveal themselves to fill the silence you create, through detachment so complete that no insult, no flattery can move you from center. That's the first tactic, the art of controlled stillness. Sounds passive, but it's the opposite. Stillness makes people nervous. Humans are addicted to reaction. They need feedback to feel safe. So when you stop giving them that, they begin talking, oversharing, confessing just to feel balanced again. And you gather everything. You study the cadence of their words, the inconsistencies between what they say and what their eyes betray. Every contradiction is a map, a tiny fracture in the mask they wear. You don't fixate on what they tell you. You fixate on what they try not to. Observation becomes power when it's disciplined. When you no longer react to what's said, but to what's hidden beneath. That's the silent switch from amateur to strategist. Look closely. The world worships loud confidence, but true dominance is quiet. The most dangerous person in any room is the one who doesn't need to prove anything, because that person sees everything. And here's the paradox. The more invisible you become, the more control you have. People project their desires onto blank surfaces. When you stop defining yourself too quickly, they start defining you for you, revealing what they value, fear, and need in the process. That's the essence of intelligence gathering. To create a mirror so reflective that they reveal their reflection through you. But let's go deeper. The human mind leaks information constantly. Micro-expressions, choice of pronouns, hesitations before specific words. These are emotional fingerprints. The amateur tries to memorize them. The master simply notices patterns over time. The less effort you seem to make, the more truthful the data becomes. Because when people sense effort, they sense manipulation. When they sense calm, they open up. Remember this. In psychology, trust is not given, it's elicited. And the fastest way to elicit trust is to stop seeking it. When people feel you have nothing to prove, they project safety onto you. That's when they begin to share voluntarily. And that's when the game truly begins. You see, every mind game starts with curiosity and ends with control. But control isn't always visible. It's not about domination. It's about direction, subtle influence over where attention flows, what emotions ignite, what decisions feel self-made. The greatest manipulation doesn't remove your freedom. It redirects it. So, ask yourself, when was the last time you truly decided something? And when was the last time someone decided through you? That's the awareness gap. Close it and you stop being the board piece, you become the player. Now look again at the people around you. Friends, coworkers, lovers. Each is playing a game they'll never admit to. Some play to be liked, some to be needed, some to stay one step above their own insecurity. If you learn to read those hidden motives, you hold their blueprint. And blueprints don't just show what's there, they show where to press when you need movement. So, before you speak, before you reveal, before you act, pause, still your face, let silence stretch. Let the other person wrestle with the discomfort you control. That's when cracks appear. That's when truth spills out, masked as small talk. You'll realize something chilling yet liberating. People tell you everything, as long as you're patient enough not to interrupt their lies. The mind game is not a battle of words. It's a ritual of patience. The slower you move, the more frantic they become. And when they rush, they reveal. This is your first lesson in mastering the unseen. You win the game not by playing faster, but by making the others play themselves. Because control isn't taken by force. It's taken by silence. Every human being wears three faces. The first is for the world. The second is for their circle. The third, they hide even from themselves. If you want control, you must learn to see that third face. Because that's where truth hides, trembling behind well-rehearsed emotions. The greatest illusion of communication is that words carry meaning. They don't. Emotions do. Watch closely next time someone speaks. Their body, not their mouth, will tell you what they truly believe. Their eyes flicker when they lie. Their breath shifts when they feel threatened. Their shoulders tilt ever so slightly when guilt meets pride. These are not accidents. They are emotional coordinates. The master observer collects these like maps. Every gesture, tone, and hesitation becomes a point of reference, a marker of who this person is under pressure. Because anyone can fake calmness when the world agrees with them, but only their emotional leaks reveal what happens when it doesn't. That's where you find control, not in the calm, but in the cracks. The art of emotional mapping. When you meet someone, don't just listen to their story, decode it. Ask yourself, asterisk, what emotion repeats in their speech pattern? Asterisk, what subjects make them subtly defensive? Asterisk, which values do they insist on too much? Because overcompensation is the loudest confession. Here's a rule the ancients knew. Exaggeration exposes insecurity. The man who constantly says, "I don't care what people think," is already enslaved by their opinions. The woman who insists she's fine at every opportunity is battling a storm inside her chest. And the friend who always jokes often does so to avoid showing pain. Every word has a motive. Every smile hides a calculation. The more patterns you trace, the more predictable people become. That's intelligence, not in the academic sense, but in the predatory sense. You are mapping emotional terrain the way a hunter maps wind direction. Once you know what drives someone emotionally, you no longer chase their approval. You decide how and when to trigger their needs. And that's what influence truly is, the art of offering what others crave, just when they believe it's their own choice. There's another level to emotional mapping, mirroring, not imitation, reflection. When someone talks about anger, you slow your tone not to calm them but to anchor their trust. When they express joy, you let a shadow of that warmth pass your face, just enough for their brain to register similarity. Humans bond with resemblance faster than with truth. We trust reflections because they feel familiar. That's the silent beauty of mirroring. You can infiltrate emotional defenses without ever raising suspicion. The brain mistakes similarity for safety, and in safety, people confess. This is how the powerful extract information, not by demanding, but by resonating. And yet, here lies the paradox of all manipulators. To control emotions, you must transcend your own. Because if you react, you reveal. If you reveal, you lose leverage. So you train yourself to be emotionally fluent but emotionally detached. To feel everything without identifying with it. To listen to anger without absorbing it. To understand pain without offering comfort. That is not cruelty, it is discipline. Because your calmness becomes the mirror in which their chaos unfolds. Each person you meet leaves an emotional echo in you, a trace of their intent, their fears, their rhythms. Most people ignore these echoes because they are addicted to their own noise. But when you start to listen, really listen, You can sense what others are about to do before they know it themselves. That's how a strategist moves. They don't react to actions. They respond to patterns long before actions emerge. A manipulator needs deceit. A strategist needs silence. You can sit across someone who believes they're winning and already know the next 5 moves they'll make. Not because you're smarter, but because you're calmer. Here's what separates amateurs from masters. Amateurs seek emotional reactions. Masters seek emotional data. They don't judge people for weakness. They catalog it. They don't argue. They record. And that neutrality, that serene stillness, is what terrifies others. Because nothing is more unsettling than someone who refuses to play emotionally. Neutrality is the blade of psychological warfare. It slices through lies without resistance, and it gives you total control over your inner landscape. Once you stop taking emotional bait, you stop being readable, and unreadable minds are untouchable. This is the evolution of power. From physical dominance to psychological invisibility. By now, you begin to see the pattern. Intelligence gathering isn't about spying. It's about noticing, with precision, patience, and purpose. It's about walking through conversations like a surgeon, collecting fragments of humanity without getting infected by them. It's about never letting your empathy become your exposure. Because empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. But empathy with precision, that's control. The world doesn't reward the kind-hearted. It rewards those who can read kindness as a signal, fear as a compass, and emotion as an entry point. Learn to do that, and you won't just play the game, you'll rewrite it. Power rarely speaks. It observes, calculates, and waits. You've probably noticed it, the way a room changes when someone stops talking. The silence stretches, the other person fidgets, their words start tripping over themselves just to fill the void. They call it awkward silence. You call it data collection. Silence is not the absence of noise. It's the presence of dominance. Most people speak to feel safe. They drown in their own words because stillness exposes their insecurities. The moment you stop feeding them that comfort, you become the mirror reflecting what they fear most. Their own thoughts. That's where true control begins, not in what you say, but in what you withhold. Silence makes people reveal more than questioning ever will. It disarms their defenses, confuses their rhythm, and amplifies their guilt. The untrained mind panics in stillness. They start confessing just to regain a sense of normalcy. That's why interrogators, psychologists, and Machiavellian strategists all master the same skill, the art of strategic quiet. You can test this instantly. Next time someone explains themselves too much, don't respond, don't nod, don't smile, don't interrupt. Just stare. Watch how the silence grows teeth. They'll start adjusting their story, adding unnecessary details, trying to guess what you're thinking. That's the moment you've already taken control, because you've shifted the emotional burden from you to them. They are now reacting to your silence, while you are analyzing their reaction. That's not manipulation. That's psychological mastery. Human beings fear ambiguity. When the mind doesn't know what's coming, it fills the gap with assumptions. And assumptions are always emotional. When you stop reacting, people project their own insecurities onto your stillness. If they're guilty, they think you know. If they're weak, they think you judge. If they're manipulative, they think you've seen through them. Your silence becomes a canvas for their conscience. And the louder their guilt becomes, the quieter you can stay. In the world of mind games, the one who speaks less always knows more. Words equal vulnerability. Every statement can be countered, doubted, or twisted. But silence cannot be attacked. It can only be interpreted. And interpretations are always emotional, never logical. That's what gives it power. Because people don't respond to silence with logic. They respond with anxiety. And anxious people reveal everything. When you say less, your value multiplies. When you withdraw attention, it becomes currency. And when you stop explaining yourself, people start explaining you. That's the silent hierarchy of power. Strategic silence extends beyond conversation. It's also about controlled distance, withdrawing emotionally or physically to reclaim leverage. The moment someone takes your presence for granted, your silence rebalances the scale. When they text, you delay. When they demand, you vanish. When they expect a reaction, you give them stillness. The absence becomes your presence, and they begin to chase what they once ignored. That's how emotional economy works. Scarcity breeds value. But here's the paradox. If you use silence for revenge, you lose. If you use it for control, you win. The purpose isn't punishment. It's power calibration. Every withdrawal teaches others how much access they truly have to you. And access in the psychological world is currency. The less you give, the more they crave. The more they crave, the more predictable they become. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men are driven by two forces, love or fear. If you cannot inspire the first, ensure the second." Silence does both. It withdraws affection, creating hunger, and it creates mystery, inspiring fear. That duality keeps you in control, because the world chases clarity, and clarity is control lost. Ambiguity keeps people orbiting around you, seeking understanding they'll never fully receive. They start asking themselves questions. Did I offend them? Are they angry? Do they still care? And while they chase those answers, you conserve your energy, the most powerful resource of all. You see, in this game, energy is dominance. The one who controls attention controls the battlefield. There's another layer to silence, protection. It's the shield that keeps manipulators from entering your psyche. Every time you overshare, you feed your vulnerabilities to someone else's advantage. But when you master silence, you become unreadable. And unreadable people are uncontrollable. In a world addicted to exposure, restraint becomes rebellion. In a world obsessed with speaking, stillness becomes power. And that's what they never teach you. That silence isn't emptiness. It's precision. It's selective revelation. It's psychological dominance disguised as indifference. Observe the great leaders, the powerful negotiators, the ones who command rooms without raising their voices. They speak in calibrated fragments. Every word carries weight because it's rare. Their pauses are deliberate. Their silences are messages. That's not confidence. That's control. Because control isn't volume. It's timing. It's the rhythm between words. It's knowing when to leave a sentence unfinished, so the other person completes it with their imagination, and unknowingly reveals what they fear most. This is how power moves, quietly, invisibly, inevitably. When you master silence, you stop chasing understanding. You start creating it. You become the one who sets emotional tempo. And that's the final stage of psychological evolution, when your calmness becomes a weapon, and your silence becomes a storm, because those who control silence control interpretation, and those who control interpretation control the world. They say, if you want honesty, ask direct questions. That's a lie, because direct questions raise defenses. They awaken self-preservation. And the moment someone feels analyzed, they stop revealing, they start performing. The truth doesn't live in words. It hides in reflection. And when you master that reflection, when you learn to become a psychological mirror, you'll never need to ask another question again. People see what they are, not what you show. That's the flaw in human perception everyone projects. They talk to themselves through you. They reveal their fears, their values, their insecurities, all while believing they're reading you. When you become a mirror, you stop reacting. You reflect back their tone, their rhythm, their energy, subtly, not perfectly. Your silence becomes validation. Your nod becomes permission. Your gaze becomes a confession booth. Within minutes, they start talking, not because they trust you, but because they trust their own reflection in you. That's the mirror method, psychological invisibility. You vanish as a self and become a surface for revelation. And the human mind, desperate to see itself, begins to pour out its secrets. To use this, you must first dissolve your ego in conversation. Don't correct, don't confront, don't prove. Just reflect. If they brag, admire. If they confess, empathize. If they analyze, listen with depth. Every reaction should be a reflection, never a contradiction. And then, when they feel entirely seen, you'll notice something shift. Their body relaxes, their tone softens, their words spill out without calculation. That's when their subconscious takes over. The truth bypasses logic. They start revealing patterns, motives, timelines, everything they once guarded, because the brain feels safe when it feels mirrored. The illusion is simple. They think they're in control of the conversation, but it's you controlling their comfort. And comfort always precedes confession. Mirror neurons. That's the biological foundation of empathy, the reason humans instinctively mimic each other's emotions. It's why smiles are contagious. It's why tension spreads like fire. It's why people bond faster with those who subtly mirror their energy. The mirror method uses that same principle, not for connection but for control. By reflecting their emotional state, you synchronize their nervous system with yours. They feel understood. Their guard lowers. And once trust replaces tension, their truth becomes accessible. But here's the dark twist. Once you have that trust, you can also direct it. When people believe you mirror them, they also begin to follow your emotional lead. You can shift tone, from empathy to gravity, from humor to silence, and they'll unconsciously adjust to maintain harmony. At that point, you're not mirroring them anymore. They're mirroring you. That's when you own the conversation. The mirror method isn't just about speech. It's about energy camouflage. In rooms of power, the loudest voice rarely wins. The one who blends in, listens, adapts, that's the one who survives the longest. When you reflect others' emotional patterns, you become unidentifiable. No one sees you as threat or competition. They see you as ally, confidant, listener, and that invisibility becomes your greatest advantage. Because influence doesn't come from visibility. It comes from access. You can't influence what you can't reach. And mirrors reach everyone because everyone's addicted to themselves. Eventually, if you master this too well, something eerie happens. People start to crave your presence. They don't know why. They just feel good around you. Safe. Understood. They don't realize it's because they're falling in love with their own reflection. That's the hidden seduction of the mirror method. It doesn't require deception. It only requires awareness. And awareness, when paired with restraint, becomes power that feels invisible but operates everywhere. You don't persuade, you align. You don't push, you pull. You don't chase, you attract. Because people don't resist themselves. Now here's the shadow you must face. The mirror method is not inherently moral or immoral, that it's a tool, like a blade. It can be used to understand and heal, or to manipulate and control. But every manipulator starts with good intentions until they realize how easily this works. And power, once tasted, rarely releases its grip. So the question isn't can you do it? It's should you? Because the more fluent you become in human weakness, the more detached you grow from human warmth. You start reading people instead of feeling them, predicting instead of connecting, controlling instead of caring. That's the psychological cost of mastery. Clarity replaces compassion, and the mirror reflects not only others, but what's becoming of you. Niccolò Machiavelli once wrote, "A wise ruler must learn to deceive, not through lies, but through understanding what others choose to believe." That's the mirror method summarized. You don't lie. You simply show people what they want to see, until they show you who they really are. And when you can see others fully without revealing yourself, you reach the pinnacle of strategic control. Because in the art of mind games, information is ammunition, and mirrors are the silencers. When you master this, conversations become chessboards. Every response becomes a move, every silence a setup, every reflection a weapon. You don't need aggression to dominate. You need precision. And when your calm reflection becomes their emotional trigger, that's when you realize the cruel truth of power. Control doesn't come from force. It comes from understanding. And understanding in the wrong hands is the most dangerous weapon of all. Power doesn't collapse from attack. It collapses from emotion. You can read minds, manipulate silence, mirror intentions. But if you still need validation, you're still controlled. That's the paradox every manipulator discovers too late. You can win every game and still lose yourself. Detachment isn't about coldness. It's about clarity, the ability to stay unmoved in a world addicted to reaction. Because the most dangerous player is not the loudest one. It's the one who feels deeply, but acts selectively. Detachment is emotional discipline, the art of watching chaos unfold without drowning in it. When you detach, you no longer fight for control, you become control. Because control is never external. It's internal alignment disguised as stillness. You've seen it, the people who panic when ignored, who overreact when criticized, who chase closure like air. They're slaves to emotional gravity. Every move they make is predictable. But the detached mind? It moves like smoke. Ungraspable, unreadable, untouchable. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop needing outcomes. Because needing anything gives the world leverage. When nothing disturbs your center, you become untouchable. Every emotional reaction is a confession. Anger reveals pain. Jealousy reveals insecurity. Defensiveness reveals guilt. The one who reacts exposes. The one who observes collects. When you understand that, your silence becomes data, your patience becomes power, and your detachment becomes an invisible throne no one can overthrow. But here's the dark secret. Detachment isn't achieved by removing emotion. It's achieved by understanding it. You study it, trace it, dissect it, until you can predict your own emotional storms before they arrive. And once you can predict yourself, you can predict anyone. Because the human mind follows patterns, and mastery of your own pattern gives you insight into theirs. Manipulation requires reaction. Without reaction, the manipulator starves. They poke, they guilt, they provoke, waiting for emotional feedback. But when none arrives, their power dissolves. That's why silence and detachment are twin blades. Silence kills their rhythm. Detachment kills their control. They'll call you cold. They'll call you distant. But what they really mean is, you no longer dance to my emotions. And that's when you know you've won. Because power is never about domination. It's about emotional independence. You can't be controlled by what no longer moves you. The hardest battle is not with others. It's with your own attachment to outcomes. You'll want to respond. You'll want to prove, explain, defend. But mastery begins when you can sit in the discomfort of inaction. Because every time you refuse to react, you strengthen your control muscle. People think control is about power over others. No, it's about power over impulse. You learn to separate feeling from decision, emotion from execution. That's the true art of psychological warfare. The war inside. Win that, and every external battle becomes predictable. Here's the paradox most never grasp. When you stop trying to win, you win. Because the need to win is weakness disguised as ambition. It makes you reactive, emotional, desperate. But when you detach, when outcomes no longer define you, you stop chasing power and start embodying it. Your silence becomes strategy. Your absence becomes influence. Your calm becomes the loudest noise in the room. You're not seeking validation anymore. You're observing it flow toward you naturally. Because the world senses power. And nothing radiates power louder than indifference wrapped in discipline. Think back to the beginning. You learned to observe, Tactic 1. To analyze through emotion, Tactic 2. To weaponize silence, Tactic 3. To mirror truth, Tactic 4. You complete the circle. Because the mind games aren't about others. They're about mastering your own psychology. The goal was never domination. It was liberation. Freedom from emotional slavery, from reaction-based living, from the illusion that control exists outside of you. True intelligence isn't gathering data from others. It's gathering awareness from within. When you achieve that, you stop being a player in the game and start becoming the one who writes the rules. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men are so simple and so much creatures of circumstance, that he who deceives will always find those who let themselves be deceived." But what he didn't say is that the only true immunity to deception is self-awareness. Because once you see your own patterns, your fears, your motives, your attachments, no one can use them against you. You stop being readable. You stop being triggerable. You stop being prey. That's when you cross the line from observer to strategist, from responder to ruler. Because control isn't about manipulating others anymore. It's about mastering your own design. And once you do, no tactic, no betrayal, no illusion can move you. You've become the storm they can't predict, and the silence they can't endure. So here's the final truth. Mind games are not about deceit. They're about awareness, not about cruelty but clarity. Every tactic you've learned is a reflection of human nature, the fragile, beautiful machinery of fear, pride, love, and power. You don't need to destroy others to control them. You only need to understand how they destroy themselves. And when you master that understanding without losing your empathy, you stop playing mind games and start mastering the human mind itself. Because power at its purest is not noise, it's not manipulation, it's not dominance, it's silence, awareness, and the ability to choose when not to move, even when every emotion demands that you do. And that's the final stage of control, when the game ends, and you're the only one still standing, not because you fought harder, but because you finally stopped fighting. Because control isn't taken by force, it's achieved through stillness. And when you master stillness, you master everything.